Hey, yo, what up? I'm Josh Martinez of iHeartRadio and Z100 with all things All Elite Wrestling. Tony Khan is our host for the third time in less than 3 months. What's going on, man? Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. You're a great host, and it's great to be here with you. Thanks, Josh.
It's all good, man. Listen, it's a busy week. We have 3 shows over 5 days with the debut of AEW Dynamite on TBS. Mega stacked card. We know about Hangman and Danielson, but there's a lot of other big matches happening on TBS this Wednesday night too, right?
Yeah, it's the biggest week in AEW history because it's the first time there's ever been 5 championships on the line in AEW history, because it's the first time there's ever been 5 championships in AEW. We're establishing the TBS Championship tonight. 12 women went into the tournament. This is the 11th and final match. Ruby Soho against Jade Cargill. It's going to be absolutely huge tomorrow night on Dynamite. Tomorrow night's the first time there's ever been Dynamite on TBS. It's going to be amazing. 3 championships on the line. It's a start of a championship week. 5 championships total across 3 shows, because it's also the first time there's ever been 3 AEW shows. Dynamite moving to TBS permanently tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Pacific, back in primetime Pacific, which is going to be great for us moving to TBS with Dynamite, but we're keeping Rampage permanently on Friday nights on TNT, and now adding a new show, a quarterly special, a 1-hour Battle of the Belts, and there's going to be 2 sanctioned championship matches on that, and to have 5 championship matches and 3 shows. And I have some fun announcements about Friday Night Rampage after talking about Wednesday Night Dynamite on TBS. But you can't talk about Wednesday Night Dynamite on TBS without talking about the first ever TBS championship match, Jade Cargill versus Ruby Soho.
Now, a lot of times with these big events, AEW does a really good job of debuting new superstars. Can we expect someone to be part of any of these 3 upcoming shows?
Yes, we can. That will be on Rampage. I'm announcing here for the first time with you, Josh, just breaking some news here with you on Z100 with Josh Martinez, that we have Jake Atlas, of course, I announced earlier today, has signed with AEW. He had a great tryout match against Serpentico. Crazy fact, small world. He actually had a tryout match in WWE with Serpentico also, fittingly enough. And they had an amazing match last night. And to come back after that on Elevation, I really wanted to bring him and have him make a TV debut. So we just announced, signed Jake Atlas. He's never wrestled for us on television. He's going to be there at Dynamite on TBS. And we're going to announce at Dynamite, show the world a little bit of Jake and his tryout match, and then we'll announce on Dynamite who Jake will be wrestling on Friday on Rampage. So we'll see Jake Atlas debut on Friday on Rampage, which will be great. And we've had some great debuts recently. Again, I was talking about the TBS Championship tournament. The final, of course, is Jade Cargill versus Ruby Soho tomorrow night on Dynamite on TBS for the first ever TBS Championship. And, you know, this all, even before All Out, this rivalry between Jade Cargill and Thunder Rosa had existed. And last week, Jade Cargill, who's been on this dominant run, Jade Cargill, probably the most dominant run, in my opinion, any wrestler in North America has been on television since Bill Goldberg 25 years ago.
Wow. That's a strong opinion. Hot take.
The most dominant run, and Jade Cargill is a dominant wrestler, but Ruby Soho has come in and defied the odds repeatedly. Ruby Soho came into AEW, won the Women's Casino Battle Royale, taking out 20 other women. And, of course, she was there at the end, battling it out with Thunder Rosa. And a lot of people thought that could be the final for the TBS Championship tournament. But Jade's been so dominant. Of course, it was here in Newark where we've got this great show tomorrow night, the debut of Dynamite on TBS. It was here in Newark. The first time we saw Jade even tested really in a singles match was here in Newark. Legit Layla Hirsch really pushed to the limit. And I have to say, legit Layla Hirsch, we've seen really kind of a new attitude from legit Layla Hirsch lately. She had a great match with Chris Statlander on Christmas, and they were friends. They've wrestled together. They've teamed on the Indies. They teamed in AEW. and they went into the match as friends. But I think the competition maybe got the best of Layla, and she got very, very aggressive in the match, maybe too aggressive. And after the match, it doesn't seem like it's been the same with them. They tried to team up, here, and it doesn't seem like they're on the same page. So I keeping an eye on that. But it was here in Newark where the first time I saw somebody really test Jade Cargill. It was Layla, but Jade was able to get out of the match with a win, and it was a very notable match, both impressive for Jade and for Layla. And then since then, Jade's been again so dominant. What a great match she had in the first round of the tournament, beating Red Velvet, who had come out of the wild card round, and what a year Red Velvet had in 2021. That going back to Jade's debut, teaming with Shaquille O'Neal against Cody and Red Velvet on the Crossroads episode of Dynamite leading into Revolution. And so we ended up here, tomorrow night, the first ever TBS Championship, Jade Cargill versus Ruby Soho. We ended up here because, to some effect, Mercedes Martinez came into AEW, and Mark Sterling, during an interview with MJF and the Pinnacle, said he had a plan. And we saw that that plan was the new signing. We've had a few new signings this week in Mercedes Martinez. And of course, I mentioned Jake Atlas, and Mercedes Martinez debuted last week on Dynamite, the week after Kyle O'Reilly had shown up. It's been a huge run to end and now start a new year. And so really, as we build a stronger, more competitive roster going forward, and just so many exciting things happening, I am really interested in what Mercedes Martinez will do here in AEW. But it is noteworthy that is the first time Jade's been really in trouble. Like Jade against Layla was a very, very tough match, but Jade was able to cleanly work her way out of the match and win the match without having to hesitate to anything that resembled what Jade pulled last week. And I think
Ruby's gonna probably give her toughest test to date. Nothing against Thunder Rosa, but I think that Ruby's got just an extra gear of veteran mindset to kind of test Jade a little more. So I think it'll be kind of an interesting way to see how that match ends up.
I totally agree. I'm really excited to see who will be the first TBS champion ever. And it's very fitting. It's here on the first Dynamite on TBS. And again, Ruby's grinded out all these matches, all these wins, and defied the odds. And Jade has dominated, but we saw her leg got injured last week, and she really was again taken into the deep end by Thunder Rosa. What a great debut by Mercedes Martinez. And also great to be here with you, Josh Martinez, and then to have Jake Atlas signed today, and it's really exciting what's happening with the roster.
So we're talking about signees. Obviously, Punk and Danielson, those were kind of big signees that you wanted. Do you have a dream signee? You don't have to get into details. Do you have a dream signee, and are they in North America?
Well, I mean, you talked about the people that have signed here in the past year. We've expanded the roster and built such a strong roster. Jade Cargill, we talk about, is the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Rookie of the Year. And then as the year went on, Christian Cage debuted here, and Andrade El Idolo, Malachi Black, of course, CM Punk, who you mentioned. Adam Cole was a huge signing. And of course, Thunder Rosa came and signed with us full time this year too, and has really been on such an amazing run. And all the way to the semifinals of the tournament, and very close to reaching the finals tomorrow night. And then of course, Adam Cole came at the end of All Out, and so did Bryan Danielson, the #1 contender to the championship. He'll be wrestling Hangman Page tomorrow for the AEW Championship, the first time the championship's ever been defended on TBS, maybe the biggest championship match we've ever had on television.
Absolutely is. It absolutely is. Not a maybe. It is. I will say that for you.
It's huge. The winner's coming match was massive, and to follow up on the 60-minute draw, it's going to be amazing. And I can't wait for Dynamite tonight on TBS at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, and back to 8 p.m. on the West Coast, which will be great to get the show back in prime time, moving to TBS.
So you mentioned all of the signings in 2021. 2022 is finally upon us. Is there any I'll call it a dream signing that you're kind of going after, and you could say yes or no. You don't have to go into details, but I just want to know, are they in North America or are they not? That's it.
They are in North America, and they're coming, and pretty soon.
Oh,
and it's
pretty soon.
I'm very excited.
I'm now excited too. I love me a good tease. And what I like to do every episode when I talk to our guests, I like to do something called the Superstar Crossover, where I have somebody ask a question for our next guest. Our last guest was WWE superstar Seth Rollins, and his question is now going to you since you're our current guest. So this is Seth Rollins' question.
My question is, what is your go-to fast food order?
Ooh, I like that. I don't want to hear about greens and grilled chicken breasts. I want to hear about double cheeseburger, double onions, just straight Jim Cornette style.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want to know where you go. I want to know if you're a Taco Bell. I want to know if you're a McDonald's. I want to know if you're Wendy's, a Hardee's, a Popeyes. And I want to know I want to know your cheap meal for like a fast food I need to eat, and I want to eat a lot right now. That's what I want.
So Tony Khan, what is that cheap meal for you on the road? And when you're done, what is the question you have for our next guest? First off, cheap meal, go.
I eat pretty clean for the most part on the road. I mean, so like my go-to meal would be like getting, a steak and a salad. So that's not really a cheap meal. So for going to like a fast food place, it doesn't happen often. But if it did, it's often like whatever is open, because that's the point of the night you've reached. But I would say if I was eating fast food like in Jacksonville, it would probably be Whataburger. So getting a Whataburger would be good.
Okay. And now, what is your question for our next guest, who we don't know who it is yet? Could be an AEW wrestler, could be a WWE superstar. What is your next question for our next guest?
This is a great gimmick. You're very clever. This is a great way to like tie the shows together. Josh Martinez, again, what a great innovator he is in serialized productions. So what was the match when you were a kid, or whenever you started to love pro wrestling? What was the match that made you start to love pro wrestling?
Love that. Mine was WrestleMania 6. Hogan Warrior, completely I was all in after that. Do you have that one match or no?
Yeah, I do. I would say I don't really remember exactly when it was. I was like, I was a fan of TV before I watched wrestling, and I watched the A-Team, and Hulk Hogan was on the A-Team, and I watched G.I. Joe religiously, the cartoon, and Sergeant Slaughter was the host, and he was also like a cartoon character. And so it was a weird match for me, actually, because like I was a big fan of Sergeant Slaughter. And then it's like, what is going on with Sergeant Slaughter? And he's teaming with these guys. And, I really, really was kind of confused when I saw it. It's confusing to me as a kid, especially as a kid who, honestly, my dad looked a lot like General Adnan. And, also looked a lot like my dad looks a decent amount like Saddam Hussein. So like that was a weird angle for me. So the first match I remember watching and really I was Sergeant Slaughter in the Ultimate Warrior, where I was like hooked, but I was kind of torn by it because and then the Macho Man, of course, hitting Ultimate Warrior.
Scepter shot. That scepter shot hurts me still to this day. I feel it.
But I remember watching the opening match live, the Rockers versus the Orient Express. What a great match, the Rockers winning that match, and then Big Boss Man versus Barbarian, a great card. And Dusty and Dustin Rhodes versus DiBiase and the $1 Million Man, of course, and a great card. But then I remember that match, and then WrestleMania 7, and so a year after that was most emotionally involved I think I got in something, because it was the most they'd ever swung me in one segment on a character in the Macho Man, and then loved the Macho Man ever since, and then did a deep dive backwards and Savage Steamboat. So it was gradually getting into it. But I love pro wrestling, and from the first time I saw it, I was like 7 years old, and I guess I got hooked around the time I turned 8, just after I turned 8.
You could just tell that you're a fan, and I think that's what a lot of AEW or wrestling fans, for that matter, love about you, that you are genuinely a fan. You could go back and fans have done this on social media where they pull up a lot of your message board material from Wrestling Observer or Figure 4 Online, whatever it was, whatever you were on at the time. And I just think like it's those little things that it's like, yo, that's dope. It's almost like one of us. One more time, it's a historic week for All Elite Wrestling. We're looking at 3 shows over 5 days, starting with AEW Dynamite from the Prudential Center, literally a few miles away from here, Wednesday night on TBS. TBS starting at 8 o'clock, not just in the East Coast, but 8 o'clock on the West Coast as well. We don't have to worry about TNT and NHL games anymore. Huge championship matches, 5 titles in 5 days. Before we let you go, is there any one last thing you want to say before we let you go?
I really appreciate you always having me on. Thank you to the great wrestling fans. We're looking forward to continuing to build the strongest, most competitive, the most elite roster of the best wrestlers, the most diverse, talented, athletic, charismatic roster of wrestlers. We don't script promos here. The wrestlers have a lot of input. We work together on story, and each wrestler gets a chance to express their own voice. And the further they work their way up the card, the more voice they have. Like I remember when Max Caster and Anthony Bowens were 2 separate guys on AEW Dark, and they become a huge part of the show. They were both on Dark, and I really liked both of their work. They'd never teamed before. And I'd seen Max doing freestyle raps on Twitter, but he'd never done it as an entrance. So I had the idea to make them the Acclaimed, which is like this name I'd had sitting around for like 3 years. As a team, I thought was like the greatest name, but I never had the team I wanted to put it on. But for like 3 years, I was like, I got to find the Acclaim. And it was them. And now they have so much voice in their character and things they get to do. I'll announce here for the first time on Rampage this week, you're going to see a music video from Max Caster and Anthony Bowens talking about Sting and Darby Allin. So they have a huge voice in their character. And Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, how far they've come. They got a huge win on Rampage late in the year, beating not only, really 5 of the strongest wrestlers in AEW, the tag team champions, the Lucha Brothers, and they teamed with 2.0 and Daniel Garcia, who are also really on the rise, especially Daniel Garcia, who's a wrestler I'm so excited about. Man, Garcia's really got something. He's been in there's a reason he's been in with all the top people. And for him to get now 2 wins against Eddie Kingston, I mean, it's massive. And 2.0 and Garcia versus Kingston and Santana and Ortiz in that no DQ, no holds barred, no rules trios match on Rampage. We know Jake Atlas is going to debut on Rampage. We know that you're going to get that music video. There's going to be a lot more on Rampage, some huge matches that we'll announce tomorrow on the debut of Dynamite on TBS. And then, of course, this huge week, we got Dynamite on TBS, Rampage every Friday on TNT, and the first ever Battle of the Belts. It's going to be so huge, and we're going to start it the way we started off the first AEW TV show, Cody versus Sammy Guevara, and how far Sammy Guevara has come since that first match. But on Christmas, it's back to square one. He lost the TNT title, but he's made this New Year's resolution that he's going to get it back, and we'll find out Saturday night if Sammy Guevara can keep that New Year's resolution. So I'm so excited about this championship week, and it all starts tomorrow night with Dynamite on TBS.
I love it. I appreciate it. Tony Khan, one more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.